Hey guys, I decided to do another edition of my Taking Back Words series. The first one that I did was about the definition of racism. There's actually two parts of that you can watch. I'll probably make a whole playlist specifically for this series, but today we're going to talk about fascism and we're going to talk about Nazis. The reason why I feel this needs to be identified is that I've noticed that they call people Nazis and fascists now on the drop of a hat. And the translation that they want as far as to like what it means is just it's becoming more and more encompassing of anything that they don't agree with. So for example, at the Wii Spa, Antifa showed up to attack soccer moms, who were just there because they didn't want their children exposed to pre-op trans people's penises. And for some reason that required a response from Antifa. And I've seen them call even moderate Republicans fascists. I did a video a long time ago, literally called Moderate Republicans are fascists. So if you don't believe that people say this, that's the reason I take screenshots of these conversations, because I get that all the time. They want the term fascism to basically mean anything that's not them. And that's why, just like racism, like transphobia, they just keep trying to rewrite these definitions to suit their purposes. And that's why, again, I compare it to religious persecution, because historically, witch hunters and inquisitors would just kind of change the terms, of engagement to whatever it was that suited them in the moment so that they could get their witch. And so let's just, first of all, take a look at the actual definition of fascism for a moment. The simple definition is a way of organizing a society in which a government ruled by a dictator controls the lives of the people and in which people are not allowed to disagree with the government. Very harsh control or authority. Full definition, often capitalized, a political philosophy, movement, or regime, as that of the fascisti, that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. Now, ironically, this is one of the reasons why some people call Antifa a fascist, especially for that last part, forcible suppression of opposition. And people call Trump a fascist. People call a lot of people a fascist. The Proud Boys are supposedly all fascists too. I've never spoken to anybody on the right that, aside from the really small percentage of people that are in actual fascist organizations, which represents a very tiny percentage of the population in the United States, who've ever said that they suggest that we should have a dictator, whoever suggests that we should have, like harsh government rule. And one of the biggest disqualifiers from this is that the Nazis were pretty big fans of censorship, which is actually why I made this meme. I made this back when I made my video specifically about censorship, because nowadays people on the left are trying to convince themselves that censorship is fine as long as you're censoring social media to protect people from dangerous ideas in the name of public safety and national security. Like, they don't recognize that it's literally part of the fascist handbook to engage in censorship. And now they have all of these excuses and, varying qualifying reasons why we should be willing to engage in censorship. This is not something that any of the Proud Boys have ever seen advocate. It's not something that Patriot Prayer people advocate. Again, there are varying degrees of radicalization in these groups, but I can say there is one group that definitely advocates it, and that would be Antifa. They actually feel that if anybody says things that they believe might lead to fascism, that must be shut down immediately. You're seeing a lot more support for censorship on college campuses because they don't want to actually engage and debate with anybody. They just want to shut down the conversation, which is exactly what the men in this picture were doing. And quite ironically, a lot of those books they were burning were communist books. So basically, fascism has a definition, and you can't just pull one out of your ass anytime you want to just to try to suit the conversation. Now let's take a moment and look at the definition of Nazi. A member of a German fascist party controlling Germany from 1933 to 1945 under Adolf Hitler. Well, there's definitely none of those around anymore, at least not in the United States, because it's past 1945. And then it says, often not capitalized, A. One who espouses the beliefs and policies of the German Nazis. See fascist. B. One who is likened to a German Nazi, a harshly domineering, dictatorial, or intolerant person. So, again, this doesn't really. I mean, if you can give me some tangible examples about how supposedly this is what anybody on the right that you guys all think are automatically fascists or Nazis espouse, I'd love to see the evidence. But it's not something that collectively all Republicans or soccer moms at the Wii Spa. Yeah, that was actually what I said to somebody in a Twitter argument about this, and of course I got blocked when I brought out the details and the truth again. But I just said, Republicans, people who are carrying American flags, all these people are getting labeled fascists, and then I pointed out, literally said, soccer moms at the Wii Spa who just don't want their children to be exposed to pre-op trans penises are not fascists, and they're not Nazis. And the guy just literally said, counterpoint, yes, they are. And so when I, spat all of the truth at him, all of a sudden, of course, I got blocked. They're really banking on us just like having a new definition of the word Nazi and the word fascist. And I'm not going to share the clip of it, but if you look at, there's a Bill Maher conversation specifically about Gina Carano, where a former United States senator just says Gina Carano was a Nazi. There's zero evidence of her having any affiliations of anybody within the Nazi party or espousing any of those beliefs. And again, nobody who's a huge fan of the United States Constitution is going to advocate for Nazism or fascism. The United States Constitution is designed in such a way that you could never have such a government. There is no way to become a dictator in the United States Constitution. Carrying the American flag, you'd say that is that evidence of somebody being a Nazi? Well, they seem to think that it is. They go after people for all kinds of different symbols, and they are the ones who engage in this kind of aggressive, intolerance when it comes to anybody of different beliefs, and they just label them this. It's just like being labeled racist because you disagree with maybe Black Panther wasn't your favorite film, or calling everybody who doesn't agree with, say, trans athletes in sports must be full-on transphobic. It's an attempt to twist the words, to just kind of 1984 everything. So take a moment and consider this, but the big point is this. I want you guys, if you're watching my show, stop permitting this in conversations. Demand that people give exact reasons why someone's a fascist, someone's a Nazi. Because this is another example of just trying to lie new definitions into being. And I've been told when I use these definitions before, well, that definition isn't sufficient. I'm like, oh, okay, where have I heard that before? And they still couldn't give me any kind of coherent answer about how the definition actually should espouse to be, well, anything that they don't like. Because again, none of these patriot constitutionalist types, are advocates for fascism. Not even the executive of the United States is a dictator. They have all kinds of checks and balances. So don't tolerate people lying to you about the meanings of these words. Don't tolerate people lying to others about the meanings of these words. This is an information war at this point. And just like in 1984, the whole purpose is to try to change the definitions of words, to change the thoughts of people. Don't put up with it. Stand up to it. Call it out every single time. Do not in any way comply with these new ways of talking that people want you to engage in. Because if they can label anything right-leaning fascist, if they can label, it's not even just right-leaning people. Here's a video where Portland Antifa attacked a man who's actually a Bernie supporter for bringing an American flag to protest fascism. So again, not a fascist. What they really want, and the reason why they want to associate any kind of patriotism with fascism, is because their plan is to try to make any form of patriotism in of itself fascism. And there is something to be said that nationalism sometimes evolves out of patriotism, but there are plenty of people in the United States who are not, fascists, who are not Nazis, who fly the American flag. I mean, Shuan Head is a total leftist YouTube personality, and she has an American flag behind her all the time. But anyway, again, just don't tolerate this anymore. This guy suffered a concussion after an anti-fascist activist hit him over the head with a club during a demonstration against Patriot Prayer in Portland, August 4th. I didn't come as part of any one group, he said in an interview with the Oregonian. I was just protesting outsiders coming here for their, tactically fascist event. Anger followed the demonstration has largely been directed at Portland police, whose use of less lethal riot control weapons as counter-protesters hospitalized at least 3 people and injured several others. But others, like Welch, became targets of violence at the hands of the protest participants, even as police kept rival political factions apart. A video taken of his attack has been viewed more than 800,000 times online. Many have assumed the tussle over a U.S. flag placed Welch squarely in the right-wing camp. Not so. I had felt like showing that a liberal, free Portland, or any major city really, is much more American and much more numerous and strong than any of these interloping groups, he said. A slightly progressive leftist by his telling, Welch is a registered Democrat in Oregon. Voting records show he cast his ballot for Bernie Sanders in 2016 in a presidential primary and Hillary Clinton in the general election. I'll forgive him. The 38-year-old line cook is also no stranger to street protests in Portland. So the point is that this guy is not a right-winger at all, and they hit him over the head with a club because he was carrying an American flag. He's obviously not a fascist. He's obviously not a Nazi. Bernie Sanders is not a fascist or a Nazi, but if you don't, that's why they want to isolate these symbols. They want to make everything like that. And I will say that if you watch the videos with Yuri, which I'm going to do some more analysis of later, one of the cures for ideological subversion is patriotic, country-loving kinds of education. Taking pride in your country is one of the ways that you stop it. And that's the reason why they want to demonize it. And that's the reason why people with American flags are being told they're fascist or racist, even though that doesn't fit either of the definitions that have been presented. They just want to make up their own definitions. Don't allow this. Just confront it. Every single time somebody says something's fascist or racist, whip out the definitions, make them define it. Most of them will try to block you, and that's because of the fact that they know that this isn't going to hold up to scrutiny. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning into V Radio, guys. Like and subscribe and ring the bell, and please consider supporting this work on Patreon. Thanks again. You'll find the link to my website that'll give you links to my various social media so you can keep track of this show, as well as my Patreon and Subscribe Star in the link below. Thanks again.